Hey guys, it's Halsey with the Helicopter Podcast, and today I chatted up with Mathew Evans. Mathew has an awesome story, kind of a story of adversity, and thinking your path is going to be one way and it turning out to be another way, and kind of all coming back full circle. So, like 20 plus years ago, Mathew wanted to be a pilot. He always knew he wanted to be a pilot ever since he was a little guy, and unfortunately, because some color vision issues, he wasn't able to get a Class 2 medical. So he ended up kind of switching paths and doing a career in the military, which he's just finishing up 23 years. And then through some self-avocation and a lot of research, found that there's an alternative test for color vision. Took the test, passed, and now he's using the GI Bill for fixed wing and rotor wing training. So this is an awesome story about adversity and how Mathew got through that. And it has some great resources. Maybe some listeners out there might be dealing with some of the same stuff. Hope you enjoy. All right, what is up, guys? It's Halsey Shutter with the Helicopter Podcast. And a few months back, I started getting messages on Instagram from patrons who have listened to the podcast or who I've met at Heli Expo, who might be familiar with my business, Helicopter, or are just familiar with the Helicopter Podcast. And one of those gentlemen is Mathew Evans. And, Mathew, first off, welcome to the show. And I mean, is the ink on your CFI certificate even dry yet? I mean, this just happened, right?
I'm still airing it out. It's very, very, very recent. I'm super fresh with that.
Yeah, I have to say thank you. I saw your Instagram post with you announcing that you got your CFI on the helicopter side, and it looks like you used a helicopter pen to do so.
I sure did. And full disclosure, it is one of the best writing pens that I have ever used. And that's not just me trying to fan the flames of your ego there. I mean, it's a good pen. So well done on choosing those.
That's funny. I wish I could say like there was like a long courting process when it came to choosing the right pen. We bought all of our Heli Expo stuff probably almost 3 years ago. Leading up to the show a couple years back, and I ordered way too much stuff. So I think I'll have those pens and other swag like for the rest of my life. And it probably was kind of based off budget, especially back then. So I'm glad we work with a company called Safeguard. So shout out to Safeguard, who does a lot of our swag and things like that. So I'm glad that the pen writes well. I obviously use the pen on a daily basis myself. And I don't know if you can see me. You said we're doing audio only, but you can see me.
Yes, sir.
Check out this. This is pretty cool. I'll show this in the on the video side, but we just had these helicopter business card holders made, different airframes. So this is a 206 or a 407. Has this helicopter on it. Pretty excited about that. But congratulations on getting through your CFI. It's a big step and very exciting. And I understand that you're not just a rotor guy, but you're also a fixed wing guy. So if you wouldn't mind just, for our listeners out there, giving just a little bit of background on who you are, how you got into aviation, what you were doing before aviation, including your service time, just to kind of paint the picture of who Mathew is.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I just want to say also, I'm super stoked to be doing this. This is really cool. Really, really appreciate the opportunity. Sharing aviation is like being in aviation is one thing. Being able to share aviation with other people, as most people that have been in the industry for a while, like that's the part that's really exciting, right? So getting to share some things with other people, and especially with people outside of aviation or people that are thinking about being in aviation, that's fantastic. So this is a really cool opportunity.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
I appreciate you coming on. One of the cool things about the day and age that we live in is being able to do stuff like this and actually have people that listen. So shout out to our listeners out there. I do this because people listen, and it allows me to then connect with new people like Mathew. And I think there's a lot of things about social media and podcasting, and there's maybe some negatives, but there's a lot of positives. And a big positive is for me to be able to create a platform fairly inexpensively to be able to connect with people like yourself. So I'm glad to hear you're stoked. I'm equally as stoked that you're here on the show.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'll just get right into it. Aviation's been a super important part of my life ever since I was old enough to walk. My parents joke that even when I wasn't born yet, if a plane or something would fly over, I would kick. I don't know how accurate that is or not, but the very first time that I was old enough to articulate what I wanted for a birthday, I think I was like 3. We were coming up on my 3rd birthday, and I told my parents I wanted to fly. So my dad had a friend, a mutual friend that had an airplane, and they no kidding put me up on telephone books so that I could even this that dates how old I am. So actual actual like
Yeah, what's a telephone book?
right, yeah. So like yellow pages and white pages telephone books. They sat me up there, and yeah, that was my first experience doing something like that. He gave me the controls, and of course, the first thing I tried to do was a loop.
Oh
And
God.
yeah. So, but anyway, that was clear back in that age, and I mean, I just had the bug, and thank goodness, both my parents are extremely supportive of any type of goals or aspirations that I had, and throughout the years, they would take me to air shows, and even on Sunday afternoons, we would stop by airports, even if it was just to watch. But that led a lot of times to a nice pilot coming over and asking if I wanted a ride or something like that. So we're just heavily involved with going to things like that, even though I'm a first generation pilot. So nobody on my mom or dad's side had anything directly to do with aviation, which made things a little harder, right? Because if I had a parent that was a pilot, it'd be much easier to go flying and be exposed to that stuff. But we really had to go out of our way to be around that. And then as soon as I was old enough to start doing any kind of flight training, my parents bought me the Sporties VHS ground school clear back in, I don't know what it was, 1996 or something along there.
Nice.
And every single time I had a birthday or Christmas or any holiday that I could ask for something, it was always for flight time. So I ended up flying. I soloed just after I turned 16 with 9 hours. It was the least amount of time that my instructor had ever soloed anybody,
Nice.
adult or kid.
Slightly terrifying.
No, it was great. They the tower, just to mess with me, the tower was shooting light gun signals at me to see if I was paying attention. So so
Nice.
they gave me
Good. Let's
permission to.
let's distract the 9 hour pilot
Yeah, it
flying.
was
I
it was
love it.
basically your permission to cross runway, whatever it was, and then they were sitting there shooting red light gun signals at me, and my instructor went running inside and called the tower, asking what the heck was going on. They were just, yeah, we're just messing with them.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I did
Different time.
that. It really was, yeah, and I did that, and it was great and everything. But as I was going through the medical process of trying to get a medical certificate, I really struggled with the color vision portion of the test going into that. And essentially, I mean, this was a long time ago, so I'm sure I won't get anybody in trouble because they're probably the person that helped me out is probably not even doing it anymore. But really, they really kind of coached me through the color vision part, even just for the 3rd class, and told me I would never be able to fly commercially. And of course, that was just excruciatingly crushing on somebody that was at that point in their career and at that age. And so for years, I couldn't put just endless amounts of money into flying if it wasn't going to go anywhere. And as much as I wanted to continue to fly, I had to choose other paths. So I went into the military. Uh, I've been doing that ever since. In fact, this month, in fact, in a few days, actually, I will no longer be in the military after over 23 years of service.
Wow. Congratulations.
I appreciate that. It means that I
That's
can dye my
awesome.
hair and cut it however I want and
You're
wear.
gonna really you're gonna really let loose, huh?
Oh man, I've got a mohawk. I got mohawk waiting for me. So
Oh God.
yeah, that's
That's to backtrack real fast, I think it's interesting. I love hearing um similarities in life stories, specifically when it relates to my life. Because I was, the exact same way ever since I was a little kid. I'm sure my first word was airplane. And, every birthday, every Christmas, it was all about aviation, and I didn't get the Sporties VHS. I got I might be a little younger than you. I got the King, Martha King and her husband. I'm blanking on his name, but I got their CD-ROM, King School Private Pilot Training Course. And I remember, being 12, maybe even younger, watching those CD-ROMs, and everything was fine until I got to like altimetry. I remember they started talking about pressure and standard pressure and non-standard pressure. And I was like, I just want to fly. What the heck are they talking about? So it's it's always fun to hear kind of those parallel stories. I'm sure there's a lot of young boys and girls out there that kind of share that. So that's the neat thing about aviation. I think it's some people just kind of fall into it. We've had people on the podcast that didn't dream about it their entire life, but by and large, it's almost like it's a genetic, you get your 23andMe genetic test done, and they could find that there's a gene for flying, because it's just like, it feels like it's just something that's always been a part of my DNA.
100%. I mean, how as a little kid that you're barely able to articulate ideas and carry on full conversations, certain things you get really excited about, but how do you explain something like aviation where you're excited about it as a child, barely old enough
Yeah.
to walk, and it stays with you and only increases over time throughout your entire life? That's something that's
Yeah.
really
No, it's
special.
crazy. Yeah. It's so cool. And that's, I guess when you were going through this medical process, and you were struggling through the colorblind portion, and you kind of were told that you weren't going to get the second class or first class. Um, I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, that to me would be just a huge blow. Um, what At that point, how old were you? And when did you kind of start kind of thinking like, okay, I need to figure something else out other than, professional pilot route?
Really, really, it broke down to it was really my freshman year, even before I went out to try to do the flight training and whatnot. My dad's very colorblind, extremely colorblind, and we didn't know back then that it wasn't the male side that provided the genes to whether you were colorblind or not. And so my mom, ever since I was a little kid, she would always test me on my colors, thinking, that he's super colorblind. Is that something that could be passed down?
Sure.
And I never really had any issues. So it wasn't too long after, I'm sure I was 5 or 6 or something like that, and I just never had any issues with colors, and so we just kind of forgot about it. And I had always talked about wanting to go to the Air Force Academy, and I even visited the Air Force Academy. You can go out. You used to be able to. I don't know if you can anymore. You go out and visit and spend a day with a cadet and do all
That's
the
cool.
different things. And again, parents super supportive, so we went out and did that. And my freshman year in biology class, I think it was, we were studying the rods and cones in the eye, and I was the only person out of the class that couldn't see the colors. And
Wow.
I remember going home, riding on the bus, and just literally crying with tears coming down my face the entire time on the way home, because everything that I'd wanted to do up to that my point in my life was absolutely crushed. So I kind of moved past that, knowing that that was an issue, and basically was trying to see if I could squeeze in when I did the medical thing for my solo, since I had to have that medical, and it really kind of confirmed it when she was helping me out so much. And so yeah, it was after, it's still exciting to do the solo and all that, but it was probably, I guess, around my junior senior year in high school, in that time frame, when I thought to myself, I can't make this a career. I do have to find something else to do. as much as I don't want to.
Well, yeah, that's crazy. And so, like, when you're talking about the medical testing portion, you're just talking about like the circles with the dots, and you have to tell them what number you see.
Yeah, the pseudo isochromatic plates, or PIP tests, is the standard test that you have to take for that. And usually it's the Ishikahara is kind of the standard PIP test that most places use.
That is terminology I've not heard of, so that's that's good to know. So, I want to get into the colorblind, and kind of the alternate testing and everything. But prior to that, let's back up a little bit. What service were you in, and what'd you do in the service?
Sure, yeah. So that goes right into what else I had to choose, right, to do other than flying, since that wasn't going to pan out, especially for the military. Uh, so my dad, he was the commander of a unit in Kansas. That's where I was born and raised, and
Okay,
he was a conductor of a military band. So I'd been around that ever since I was born, and he was also on the civilian side. He was in the National Guard, so of course that's just part time. You do kind of your 2 weeks, or yeah, 2 weeks in the summer, and then one weekend per month. There's a lot more that goes on than that, but that's kind of the standard, kind of the status quo.
sure.
In other words, it's not full time. And so he did that, and he was also a band teacher on the civilian side for multiple schools. So I was always around music, heavily involved with music, and I was first chair all the way coming up through middle school, high school, state band competitions, drum major of the high school band, all that stuff. So it only made sense that if I can't fly, then I can do the military musician thing. And so I did. I auditioned, got into the unit. I stayed with that unit in Kansas for 5 years, and then decided to go active duty from there. So I transitioned over to the active duty side, stayed in active duty for 7 years. I deployed to Iraq twice for a year long each. And believe it or not, yep, there's actually military musicians that go to combat zones, and we have a military mission that we do over there. I'm sorry, a musical mission that we do over there to provide music for different types of things. But we also do combat roles as well. And so on the first deployment, I was a TCOM aerostat operator, which is the big balloons that have a Kevlar cable or a tether that keeps it attached to the ground. And there's different kinds of sensing equipment on it, cameras and whatnot. And so our entire band was trained and certified on how to operate these things. And so half the band would operate on 12-hour shifts, and the other half of the band would go and do musical missions. And then every 2 months we would swap. So
Wow.
we were in charge of basically visual security overwatch of an entire base of thousands and thousands of people, and we had never done that job before ever. But we came into the country, they trained us up, and we did it extremely well for the entire year that we were there.
That's awesome.
And then on the second deployment, that was up in Tikrit, and the second deployment I was down in Baghdad, and we did the musical mission down there as well. And then the other parts of the time, we would augment the personal security detachment for Higher Headquarters Battalion for 25th Infantry Division. So I was actually a 240 turret gunner, like crew service weapon, on convoys that would go between the Baghdad International Airport and the Green Zone on Route Irish.
Man, that's crazy. So it's like, one minute your musical mission, the next minute your combat. I mean, that's I can't even imagine when you say musical mission. Obviously, has probably not much to do with helicopters, but it's fascinating because I'm not familiar at all with that actually. What exactly entails like a musical mission in wartime like that when you're actually deploying, other than obviously the secondary roles that you were just talking about?
Yeah, so our primary reason for being over there, I mean, everybody's soldier first, right? So everybody has that you have to be able to do, have to be able to shoot a rifle, have to be able to communicate, move effectively, treat casualties, get them out, all that stuff. And then our primary role as musicians is to provide music for soldiers, other service members, people of the public. Obviously, when we're back here in the CONUS versus OCONUS. And think about it this way: the easiest way to explain it is anywhere that the USO would not send their people to go play because it was too dangerous, that's where we specialized.
Makes
So you
sense.
so you would have like we'd have Robin Williams came to visit us. Uh there was, I'm trying to think of who else came in. There was, I mean, some
Is that like when they do the Robin Williams is up doing like his stand up routine, and then all of a sudden the horns start going,
yep,
and the whole battalion just turns away from him, and he's like, "What the f just happened?"
absolutely. Yeah, in fact, Toby Keith was over there, and right as he was getting ready to start, we started getting mortared.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh!
and so of course the big voice comes on, and incoming, 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 and everybody drops down the way that you're supposed to, or finds shelter. And that passed, and they gave us the all clear, and he stood up and held his middle finger up and said, "We're doing this anyway." And
Wow.
we rocked on. But that was on a major contingency base that's very large and has a lot of QRF, or quick reactionary force, to be able to go after the bad guys. And I mean, we had CRAMs, which are basically like super high speed Gatling guns that could detect the rockets and mortars coming in, track their trajectory, and fire time delayed rounds into the trajectory of that rocket or mortar coming in and explode on that line. I mean, we had like some pretty high tech stuff, and it was effective about half the time. But then we would go to these small little places, like there was a fire base on top of Sinjar Mountain up in North Iraq, probably a total of maybe 40 or 50 personnel. And we would go either by helicopter or convoy all over the country to these little places where they didn't get very much relief. And they certainly didn't get people coming in like Toby Keith, to come in and give him
Sure.
some music, give him some reprieve. So that's where we came in. We'd come in. We had a rock band. We had a jazz combo. Combo didn't play a whole
It's
bunch over
awesome.
there for like playing for troops out with that kind of stuff. We had a New Orleans brass band that was a lot of fun. But really, the rock band and the brass band, those guys played a lot. I was with the rock band. I actually ran sound, so I'm a trumpet player. That's my MOS. But as a secondary assigned duty, I ran sound, which meant like setting the speakers up, setting all the sound reinforcement, running the sound reinforcement during the shows, making sure everybody's in ear monitors and sound levels and compression and effects and just everything that has to do anything that you would think of at a rock concert with the guy running the board is what I did, but I did it in Iraq. And
Man,
interestingly enough, with helicopters, how it kind of ties in, because I did fly in Blackhawks quite a bit, and we actually took all of our equipment and we taped out a place on our floor that was the size of the inside of the back of a Blackhawk, put masking tape on the floor, and we took all of our equipment that we had to take with us and we numbered it, and we figured out how to Tetris all of our equipment a certain way so that it would all fit in there. And anytime that we would fly, they want to be on the ground as little as possible for many reasons: fuel, fuel management, all that stuff, time hacks, but also, there's people that are trying to kill us, so they don't want to be hanging out there. They want to be in and out. So we would have all of our equipment lined up in order on the side. I was kind of the smallest one out of the group, so as soon as they would land, I would jump up in the back of the second Blackhawk, help the crew chiefs put the seats up, and then people would start handing me gear, and I'd know exactly, because we'd practice everything, set it all up in there, get it all lined in, packed in, and then I would be the last person done. Everybody else would slowly start getting in the front helicopter. We always flew in a pack of two, flight of two, whatever you want to call it. And I would jump out of the second one. The crew chiefs would finish up putting the doors and everything back, and then I would jump in the first Black Hawk, and then we'd fly to wherever we were going, and then just do everything in reverse on the back end. So we flew a lot like that. And I would always sit, because I was always the last one, I would always sit in what's called the hurricane seat. That's the back right seat, very farthest back and farthest right seat in the Black Hawk. Because of the way that the rotors turn and the way that aerodynamics work, you just get blasted with air. And I loved it. I would just loosen up my left shoulder harness and lean out over the edge. And I had like a little pouch with a camera on me. This is like before cell phones had really good imaging. And I had like this little handy cam that I had with me. I got so much cool footage of being over downtown Baghdad, flying around, flying up in the north over mountains and stuff. I mean, it was actually really pretty. And fortunately, we never got into like ticks or like TIC's troop in contact where we were getting direct fire. Pretty lucky on that.
Man, that's incredible. Well, thank you for your service, and certainly an interesting, MOS, but so necessary. Music is such an amazing thing, and I can imagine during wartime, especially on these small fire bases where there's these guys are kind of out in the middle of nowhere and they're in combat, being able to have some reprieve of familiarity with music and whatnot probably is like a huge mental boost. And I'm sure the government has spent lots of money on determining that is actually the case, that there's a positive net effect, to the music and whatnot. So that's super cool. Have you said that you're going on 23 years and you're retiring here soon? Has that been your career in the military? Has been mainly as a musician?
Yeah, the whole time, even after I got out of active duty, I switched back to the National Guard. Came to Indiana for educational purposes. That did not end up working out, but I ended up staying in Indiana until really just recently, and that's where I'm retiring from is the band in Indiana, and I've got to do a lot of cool stuff. I mean, we have the Indy 500 that goes on every year,
Oh, cool.
so every almost every year we march in the Indy 500 festival parade.
Oh,
And
fun.
in fact, my best friend, he's the one that plays taps. He has played taps for the last 2 years. I mean, for millions of people, and that's this is really cool to be involved with that stuff. And there's ceremonies that happen throughout the year. We have an incredible war memorial in downtown Indianapolis, and some other things that we're constantly involved with. And then something that really doesn't have anything specifically to do with music, but something I've always been involved in, and something that's really important to me is military funeral honors. And in fact, that was my last full time job. I was the federal technician for the entire state program of Indiana for military funeral honors. That was what I was doing before I resigned and pursued aviation full time. And that was just incredible to be in part of that. I think I'm around, I don't know, 1,100 or 1,200 services that I've
Wow.
done, including
Too too
funerals.
many.
And well, most of them are people that have lived a full life.
Oh,
And
okay, like retired
yeah,
veterans
I
type
mean,
deal. Okay.
certainly I've done ones that were KIAs and memorial services in Iraq and whatnot, but the majority of them are people that have lived a full life and passed away of natural causes. And of course, we're still there to honor them and provide a service for their family. But that
That's
was
really cool. Yeah,
it.
it's really like rewarding, I'm sure, and as Americans, I think America's great for a lot of reasons. I think potentially right now one would argue that we're in such a disarray, but I would still argue that one of the greatest things about America is our patriotism, our proudness of being Americans. And I hope, as not just myself but all Americans, would support our military men and women. It's just uh, I can't imagine being an 18-year-old kid and making a decision, to go and go fight for the country and fight for our freedoms. And it's just a wild crazy thing, and wild crazy world that we live in, to even have to consider that. But I it's cool that you're able to give back on that. I do want to transition a little bit back into your aviation path. um, Obviously the colorblind was a deal breaker, at least back in the day, but something obviously happened between then and now in which you have been able to navigate that problem, that issue, and working on now both becoming a professional helicopter and airplane pilot. What is that? What has that process been like? And I'm sure we have listeners out there that might you might be able to give hope to a lot of people actually, that have maybe gone through the same thing, or trying to figure out how to navigate it. In fact, I do some cool things with MHM Publishing, which is Vertical Skies Magazine, things like that. And we should probably connect you with them because that seems like an interesting story of how you navigated it. So how'd that all work out?
It's definitely a very near and dear subject because I lost at least no less than 2 decades of my life that I could have been doing something professionally in the aviation industry, and that was stripped of me specifically because of the ignorance of AMEs. 100%. I would talk to every so often I would reach out to a different AME and just talk about it or try to find out more information, and I was constantly told the same thing, which was wrong, which was absolutely wrong. And it frustrates me to no end that there's other people out there that will go through the same process, even in today's day and age, and they will be told the incorrect thing, and it will keep them from being able to pursue their dreams. So, that being said, I ran across a YouTube video randomly back in 2020. It was just somebody that turned on a camera and talked about stuff for 5 or 10 minutes, specifically about color vision and what they did to be able to overcome their color vision deficiencies in order to obtain a class 1 medical. And of course, I immediately perked up. So it comes down to this. There's an entire list of approved alternate color vision tests, FAA approved, that so many AMEs do not know about, which is just gut wrenching. On the approved list, the one that I took in particular is called the Farnsworth Lantern test.
That is what I was trying to remember when we were talking before the podcast. Farnsworth Lantern.
Yep. So the Farnsworth Lantern test is basically World War II technology. It is a box or a lantern, if you will, that's black inside, and it has two lights, one over the top of the other. And the lights are flashed in sequence or turned on. The window is opened, and you have to tell whether it's white, red, or amber, I believe is the three. And you just tell them one over the other. So whatever the top one is, if it's, no, I'm sorry, white, red, or green. The white, because of the way the filter is on it, really kind of looks more amberish. It's not like a super bright LED because they're trying to make sure that you can differentiate if you were to see an airport marker or like a beacon from a distance away that's not the bright LED type. So you just tell them red, green, and then they shut the window. They turn it to different colors or whatever it is. They open it back up. You tell them again. If you are color vision deficient in any way, shape, or form, the Farnsworth Lantern test is by far the easiest test to pass out of any of them. If you can't pass the Farnsworth Lantern test, that's a pretty good indication that you are color vision deficient past what the FAA considers to be acceptable. But all you need to do in order to look into this is to find an ophthalmologist that has the Farnsworth Lantern test, or there's some other locations that have them. And the key thing that you want to do is go in and ask for a consultation, not for a test, but for a consultation. And by doing that, you can go in and tell them why you're doing it. But by asking for a consultation, it cannot be recorded into your FAA record. And that is crucially important because if you do pass, then that's great. You can come back and take the test. A lot of times they'll say, do you want to count this as your official test? I mean, you passed. But if you don't, then you can try a different test, be consulted because that's what you're going for is a consultation as to things that you might want to change or look into. You can't fix color vision. That's the only issue, but at least you would know before having it be recorded that it's an issue so that you can figure out a different pathway to go instead of just having it recorded and then having to fight to overturn it, which is a
Sure.
huge, huge deal. The only other option that you have if you cannot pass an alternate color vision test is the operational color vision test, which is a practical test. It involves some things that you can do during the daytime and things that you can do at night. And if you do pass that color vision test, then basically you never have to take another color vision test again, which is great. But the flip side of that is if you fail that, then that's the permanent ruling that goes in your record, and it can be overturned, but it is extremely difficult to do so. That's kind of like a last ditch effort, and some people can pass it. A lot of people pass it. In fact, when I talked to an FAA examiner, he said the majority of people do pass the operational color vision test or OCVT. So anybody who out there that has color vision issues, very first thing you want to do is go see an ophthalmologist, try to find a place that has a Farnsworth lantern, ask for a consultation, and 95% of the people are going to pass right there. If you can't pass that for whatever reason, your last ditch effort is to do an OCVT. And even then, you can still go to a place that has a tower that has light gun signals, because that's part of the test, and practice. Have them shoot light gun signals at you. And it's kind of like a consultation. Like, it's not part of the test. You're just going out there to make sure that you can actually see the colors. And most of the time, especially if you find a place with the LED light guns, unless you're extremely colorblind, you will be able to see those colors. I can guarantee it. Very, very few
That's
people fail
wild.
that.
I can't imagine, like you said, like would you say 2 decades worth of time, your life could have looked a lot different. Granted, 20 plus years ago, being able to go and research and find things on Google or YouTube or whatever was fairly non-existent, not even a thing. And, you're just relying on an AME to say yes or no. And so it's fascinating. I don't remember the reason, but I think it was back in my Hillsborough days. We had a student that was having issues with the color blindness, and it was left on my desk to try to kind of help. And I remember finding the Farnsworth lantern test as an alternative. So I'm somewhat familiar. So for someone like you that can go and pass that test, but you have a hard time passing the other test that we were talking about earlier, is that just like a sign that you have like a low level color deficiency?
Yeah, I'm just barely on the spectrum. In fact, when I went to my AME to get the first class several years back, he said, "Hey, I want you to try this test." And of course, I gave him the side eye, like, "Nope, I've already got my letter from the ophthalmologist." So that's, by the way, that's the thing, is you go to the ophthalmologist, you get the thing saying that you passed the Farnsworth lantern test. There's and I guess we're going to leave the a link so people can go look at this for themselves, look at the directions. But essentially, there's some certain things that have to be in that letter that gets faxed directly to your AME. And then when you go in to take your medical, you don't do any of the color vision portion with the AME at all. You've already done that. The FAA accepts that an ophthalmologist is trained and licensed and acceptable to do that test. So you just don't do that part at all when you go in for the AME. But my AME, he said, "I just want to see, just for kicks and grins, how color vision deficient you are." And I said, "Well, I've already got this." He goes, "Look, you've already got it. I'm not going to fail you. I just kind of want to see where you're at, just because." So we did, and I actually passed. I
Oh,
passed
wow.
the PIP. He didn't have the Ishikahara test. He had a different one, but it was still the circles, with the numbers and stuff in it. And I actually did pass that. So I'm just barely on the edge where some tests, and it also depends on how old the test is, right? Because those plates and stuff fade over
Sure.
time. And so with all those variables, some of them I can pass and some of them I don't. And obviously I don't want to leave that up to chance. So I know that the Farnsworth lantern test is something that I can pass with ease. And so I just continue to do that each time that I have to get a medical.
Yeah, this year on my medical, actually, I've always touted that I had, an eagle eye. I can hear well and I can see well, and I've never had any eye stuff before. No, never even been to an optometrist. Um, and for the first time this year, I struggled for my second class. just looking through the thing, and you got to tell them what letters you see on whatever line they point out at. And I got through, but they could tell I was struggling. And the doctor was like, you're good now, but I'm guessing in a year from now you're going to have corrective lenses. So I guess I'm just getting to that age where the body's already starting to decay on me. So I don't fly full time anymore. So keeping the medical as a second class at least is maybe even kind of irrelevant for me at this point. But I'll probably have to go down, and I think my medical is coming up in October. Have to go and get my first ever eye exam and figure out what's going on.
The nice thing about that, though, is even with the acuity test, you can still go to an ophthalmologist ahead of time and have that done separately. And then there is a form that the ophthalmologist fills out, and same thing, they fax it to your AME, and that way you don't have to do that part of the test at all when you go in for your medical.
Oh, that's interesting. So that's super good to know. And that's maybe even more applicable to a lot of people out there. I don't know how much color blindness, how widespread that is. Probably more common than I know, but obviously a lot of people are going to have acuity issues, including, I guess, myself now. So, if you're listening to the podcast here, again, as Mathew said, in the link to the description, we'll place additional information here where you can specifically go and check out the alternative tests for color blindness, and know that you can also do the same thing for acuity. And, just all very interesting. The FAA medical system is unique. Sometimes it feels a little bit of a joke to me, but it's a scary thing when you're working as a professional helicopter pilot or airplane pilot. It's it's how you provide for your family. Going to the medical is like that one time a year where your blood pressure is higher than normal, and it's always a little bit intense. So I can imagine for you, that must have been a huge weight lifted off, being able to find that alternative test and pass it.
Oh, it was life-changing. The gentleman that left that YouTube video, I've left comments and contacted him directly and profusely thanked him, because it literally changed everything about my life. That's amazing. That one thing, that one test. And had I, like you said, like 20 something years ago, internet wasn't even close to what it is nowadays. So to try to find that kind of information, you do go to an AME and you do rely on their expertise. And the problem is you have a lot of AMEs that do it because it brings in some extra cash, and they're not even pilots, and they don't even read through all the ins and outs. They're paid and certified to be experts in that specific part of that field. And instead of being experts, they use it as a quick paycheck.
Yep. $120. Here's your medical.
Right. And in the process of doing so, they strip people of the information that they need and tell them incorrect things, which is, again, it's just gut wrenching. And then you have the other people that are, a lot of them are pilots or have been pilots, and they do it because they want to see people succeed. I mean, they're still not going to cut corners or sign you off on stuff, but they can provide information that is extremely relevant to you continuing your career, instead of just citing the bare minimum and not getting you the information that you need.
Well, I think one of the nice things about living in this day of age is, I've always advocated for, you have to provide your own advocacy at times, not just in flying and getting your medical, but just all parts of life. There's going to be times when you hear things that, come from an expert or whatever. It's sometimes you're kind of burdened with responsibility to really go, and it shouldn't be the case, obviously, but, go and actually confirm the information that you're being told is correct. And so I always encourage people to, specifically with everything that's so available today, just, go and kind of research it yourself. I want to transition, Matt, into talking about, if you were able to use your GI benefits and everything. So we're going to get into that, but first we're just going to take a quick pause for a sponsor identification.
As always, a special thanks to Celicopter for producing this podcast. Specializing in helicopter evaluations, faster sales, and superb service, Celicopter is the go-to agency for clients expecting immediate results. Celicopter's team of helicopter professionals are the best in the business. Using their aviation expertise, a nationwide network, and a proprietary 76-step listing strategy, Celicopter will convert your listing from Mayday to payday. Ready to get started? Text helicopter to 1-855-Celicopter. That's helicopter to 1-855-735-5226. And a Celicopter pilot agent will reach out. Celicopter. List it, sell it, done.
All right. Thanks again to our sponsors at Celicopter for making the Helicopter Podcast possible. So, Mathew, I can't imagine the excitement, the relief, and everything, bottled up in emotion of being able to now get your medical and know that you can pursue something that you've wanted to pursue your entire life. And I would say, I guess, one of the positives of how your path worked out is that you served in the military and you continue to serve as we speak. And that most likely allowed you to have some GI benefits to help you get through flight training. So am I correct in saying that you were able to utilize the VA to help fund your civilian flight training?
Listen, man, I'm playing 4D chess with my GI Bill. Like I have maximized every avenue I possibly can.
So, how I don't have I have a good understanding for being a non-vet myself. I understand the VA program on the helicopter training side fairly well, just because I was part of that training environment for a long time of a 141 program with a lot of VA students. When you say that you've kind of masterminded your GI Bill, what do you mean by that? What were the steps that you took, and how could our listeners that potentially are VA guys kind of follow a similar path of what you've done to be able to not just do helicopter, but also fixed wing?
Yeah, if you're a service member looking to utilize military educational benefits for flight training, I'm going to put in a huge plug right now for RTAG on Facebook, the RTAG Nation. Go to Facebook right now, pause the podcast, go to Facebook right now, and look up RTAG Nation. It stands for Rotorcraft to Airline Group. So it was originally set up for helicopter guys in the military to be able to make that transition over to the airlines. And really what it has morphed into over the years is a landing pad for all things educational when it comes to using military educational benefits to assist with flight training. So myself, I did not do anything specifically aviation related as far as my MOS goes in the military, but I'm using my GI Bill extensively to facilitate my training. And so there's a couple different ways that you can go about doing it. If you're currently in the military, you can use what's called credentialing assistance. It's comes from the same pot of money as tuition assistance. So typically $4,000 per year is what it's capped at. And depending on if you're active duty or National Guard, those amounts differ a little bit for how much you can use towards flight training. But that's your first step, is to look into that. Credentialing assistance is what it's called. And then even if you're in and if you've served for a certain period of time, then you're already eligible to use your GI Bill. And especially if you're already out and you meet the requirements to access, your GI Bill, whether it's a percentage or 100% of those benefits, as long as you use your GI Bill with a FAA approved college curriculum aeronautical degree, then your benefits are almost uncapped. So there is technically a cap, but it works on a 12-month rolling time frame. So by the time you're using new benefits, the cap on the back end is rolling along with it. So what that basically means is, for example, I started out with Liberty, which is a huge online, it's a college that offers you to be able to go to what's called a flight training affiliate. So they have a lot of different flight training schools around the entire nation. You go to the flight portion with your local flight school, and then you do the college portion online. So right now they're kind of running into some issues. I don't know if you're familiar with the whole Liberty debacle, but they kind of messed up some stuff with the VA. They're getting that stuff fixed. And I'm sure within a short period of time, they'll be back up and running where you can use your full benefits again. But you take your ground school through the college. Typically, that's just the King schools in a lot of different places. Different schools have different things. Or the school that I'm going to right now for my rotary training, you actually go to like a physical ground school with a teacher. And then you have your flight labs, which are a class, quote unquote. And the GI Bill pays for it, pays for all this stuff. So by the time it's all said and done, if you're trying to go fixed wing, that's typically in the nature of $70,000 to $80,000 that the GI Bill will pay. And in the helicopter world, so the school I'm going to right now, which takes you from private pilot all the way up through CFII, it'll be over $115,000
Wow.
just in flight training. That's not even including the college portion of it that the GI Bill pays. So it's incredible to use these benefits, because I sure as heck couldn't afford this training out of pocket. There's no way. Even if I pulled loans, there's no way I'd be able to get all the way through CFII. So
Yeah,
those are
especially on
kind of the
both
two options.
sides. It's crazy expensive, and just I think it's awesome. I'm a big support of um, VA benefits in regards to vocational training or post education, post military education, whether it's aviation or not. I think it's super important that we're taking care of the men and women that have served, and I think that this is a great way to do it. Some of the key factors, obviously, and correct me if I'm wrong, but any flight training that you're doing has to not only be with an accredited college that's providing, your ground school and study labs and things like that, but the flight school also has to have a 141 curriculum opposed to a 61 curriculum. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it also gets more confusing because there are two different types of 141 curriculums, which I didn't even know until I was already over a year into my flight training. So you have the option of doing a Part 141 curriculum at a flight school that is not necessarily associated with a college degree. It still shortens down all the required hours of aeronautical experience to Part 141 standards because it follows that curriculum. However, when you're using your GI Bill, if you are not using the GI Bill at a 141 program that does have an associated college degree with it, you're capped at this day and age about $15,000 per year. Versus if it is with a college degree, like I stated before, it's almost uncapped. Like I have yet to run into a semester. Like I did one semester, I think that my flight lab bill was $45,000 in helicopter for an R-44 for that semester, and that was just one semester. And then I had other semesters throughout the year as well. And at no point in time did they ever come back and say you've spent too much money, you've met your cap. So it's incredibly important if you want to maximize your benefits, because if you use a month of GI Bill, you've used a month, whether it's $500 that you've used or $5,000 that you've used. So obviously you want to maximize that money for that time period. And the best way to do that, if that's what your goal is to maximize the amount of money that you're using for flight training, you want to do it with a Part 141 college degree program.
Yeah, no, it's super important. And there's, I'm not familiar with Liberty and things like that. But, I am familiar with, there's several schools, including the one that I went to, Hillsborough Aviation at that time, Hillsborough Aero Academy now, linked with, Portland Community College for their program. Leading Edge is a flight school where I live at now here in Central Oregon. I think they're connected with COCC, Central Oregon Community. And because that affiliation, you're able to utilize the full extent, kind of what Mathew's talking about, of the GI benefits. With you now finishing up the helicopter side and also concurrently doing your fixed wing, what are you hoping to do in this aviation world, Mathew? I mean, you're gonna graduate flight school with a lot of certification. You're going to still be kind of on the lower time scale, obviously. What is your plan post flight school?
Yeah, have you ever seen the movie The Rocketeer? You remember that
Love the
movie?
Rocketeer. Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
it's my hands down my favorite movie of all time. Came out in 1991. It was the very first movie that I saw in the theater by myself as a kid.
Nice. The
So
Rocketeer. Yeah, that movie.
yeah,
That movie kicks ass. Actually.
that is I mean, aviation aside, that is a well written, well directed, and well executed movie.
I'm
Just
gonna
I'm
watch. I'm gonna watch The Rocketeer soon. It's been so long.
yeah,
I'm
it's
glad that you mentioned it. I love that movie growing up. Loved it.
you're gonna love it even more if it's been a while since you watched. It is so good, like even down to the score. Like Horner was the one that wrote the score on that. Just fantastic. So I've watched it. I watch it all the time. I probably watch it multiple, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a year. For some reason, it's
Nice.
always like a Fourth of July thing for me. I watch it then, as well as Independence Day. Like fantastic Fourth of July movie to watch.
Totally.
Best presidential speech ever. Anyway, so I was watching The Rocketeer, and being the nerd that I am, I was watching all the credits at the end of it. And as I'm scrolling down through the credits, I see this line for what was it? Aerial coordinator was the title on it. I said, "Huh, that's interesting." Craig Hosking was the gentleman's name that was the aerial coordinator for the Rocketeer. So since we have the internet today, I was like, "Oh man, that was 1991. I wonder if that guy's still around doing stuff or what." I was going to just send him an email or a letter or something, just thanking him. It's my favorite movie of all time. Well, guess what? He's got a website. I looked him up and I said, "Holy smokes, this guy is still doing stuff with the film industry and flying." So I sent him an email. And of course, I fanboyed a little bit right off the bat. This incredible movie. Thank you so much for making it. And it was a huge influence on my aviation arc. And I said, "Is there any way that I could talk to you about what you do in the industry if you wouldn't mind?" I didn't hear anything. I get an email back on like a Saturday night around midnight or something. Says, "Sure, call me on Monday. Here's my phone number." Like, you got to be kidding me. So I did. I called them up. This was back in, gosh, I don't know, like February of 2021. And we had a great conversation. Just so you guys know who this gentleman is, like he's basically done all the aerial helicopter camera work. He's the helicopter pilot for all of the Christopher Nolan movies for like the last 10 or 15 years. I mean, if you go look at this guy's um, like list on what is that IMDb, if you go look at all the stuff that he's involved with, surely he's been involved with several major movies that you've seen throughout the years. That's been this guy's career. He used to actually be an air show pilot before then, and so we talked on the phone, and he said, "Well, are you a helicopter pilot?" And I said, "No, I'm doing fixed wing right now." He goes, "Well, if you want to get into this type of work, you need to become a helicopter pilot because we do 90% of our work in helicopters." And so that's why I've ended up where I'm at now and completely pivoted from the fixed wing side over to rotary. And so being a low hour pilot, obviously I'm going to have to go do the things that all low hour pilots do: instruct, do tours. If I'm lucky, get out on a tuna boat somewhere or something like that to build turbine time. But eventually, once I hit that 2,000 hour mark, because that's the insurance minimum requirements, then the ultimate goal is to be a Hollywood film and stunt pilot, which I know sounds very far fetched and ridiculous. And if I don't get there, then I will have had a lot of fun along the way. But yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to be up there filming stuff and watching explosions happen, and the aerial coordinating part of it, like making sure everything runs the way it's supposed to between all parties involved. That actually really appeals to me as well, on top of just the flying portion of it, because it's like trying to get all these moving pieces with stuff that's actually pretty dangerous, or can be if it's not done right, and being able to execute that correctly, safely, make sure everybody goes home to their families and everybody has fun, and make sure that people grow as a team together while they're doing it to better those people. Like, that's an opportunity to use your leadership skills to make people's lives easier, safer, and to have them grow as a person, and for everybody to have fun while they're doing it. So that's the ultimate goal. I don't know if
That's
it's going
cool,
to
man.
happen.
It could, and it may, and it should, right? I mean, it's like that's what life is all about. life is about setting goals and trying to achieve them. And sometimes on the way to achieving that goal, something happens, maybe good or bad. It changes kind of the trajectory. You may end up doing something a little bit differently, or you may end up exactly where you want to be. But I think it's super cool. And there's obviously a need, right? There's a large industry of that type of work in that sector. I don't know. You were at Heli Expo this past year, obviously. Did you have a chance to meet Kevin LaRosa?
I didn't. That was one of the guys that I don't know why I just didn't even think to reach out to him. I did link up with Fred North. Um, I just reached out to him through Instagram ahead of time and was able to meet him, which was really cool. And I also met David Arnold that does Deadliest. He's the camera operator for Deadliest Catch, and just what a super cool guy to be around. And I still talk to him all the time through Instagram. He's just a delightful individual, and he was so stoked that I came out of my way to meet up with him out there. And we got some pictures and stuff. But what a cool dude, and what a unique job that he does. He's been doing that for over 20 years. Did you know that?
Yeah. So episode 23 of the Helicopter Podcast was with David Arnold. And I met David and Kevin LaRosa at the same time at Heli Expo. We were doing a H145 demo. And admittedly, I'm not a big social media guy. We work with a third party that kind of helps manage our social media because it's just something I'm not even that interested in, admittedly. And so I wasn't familiar with David. And I just remember seeing this guy. He had this kind of cowboyish style hat on, and he was filming. And then I remember the gal that we contract with. Her name is Annie. She was like, "Hey, I think that's like the Deadliest Catch guy," And so we got to talking, and David's written a couple books. I'm not sure if you've been able to check those out. He has a really cool story on how he kind of got into the industry, sweeping floors and kind of being a squeaky wheel. So yeah, check it out. Episode 23 was a really fun episode with David. I hope to kind of do a follow up with him because he does some incredible stuff. One thing that you may want to consider is maybe a good get your 1,000 hours, and then maybe look at like a Heli Inc. They're a company that operates most of the news helicopters all over the nation. So electronic news gathering, start working in that, middle area of, having a helicopter with equipment on board for the purpose of filming and working with a camera operator in the back. I actually flew the news for about 8 or 9 months a couple of years ago. Really enjoyed it. And I'm hoping to get Kevin on, Kevin LaRosa, aerial coordinator most recently for Top Gun. So I'm sure has some really cool stories, but if it's what you want to do, Mathew, I think you can do it, pal. It's, and I think it would be a tremendous career. I think it would be so fun. Talk about like just an amazing thing to be a part of. And then to have your legacy live on, here we are, the Rocketeer 1991, we're talking about this guy, so I think it's tremendous, and I wish you all the luck.
I appreciate it. Yeah. And the coolest thing and kind of surprising that I've found so far, I guess it shouldn't be too surprising. We all know that the aviation world, most people are pretty supportive of each other. It's a very, very small world, especially with helicopters, to be in. And I've reached out to a lot of these guys through email or through Instagram or YouTube comments, whatever it might be. And a lot of these guys, like Rick Schuster, he's the guy who's in charge of the SAG organization for pilots for movies. I don't, if anybody doesn't know what SAG is, it's the Screen Actors Guild. So you have to have a card to be able to be on screen and within certain roles in movies. And I think there's only 25 or 30 of these guys and females in the entire United States. And he's the president of the organization. I sent him an email. I kid you not. I got a text message the next day. Hey, Mathew, this is Rick. I got some ideas for you. Give me a call. How cool is that?
That's awesome.
So, yeah, so it's just getting in there and talking to these people and showing up being responsible, being available, showing that, continuing showing that you have a passion for that area. And eventually you're going to be needed sooner or
Well,
later. And
it seems like something that you've mastered too is, again, what we talked a little bit about earlier, is the self advocacy, right? No one's, you know, if you want to go and do something in the world, not only is it going to take work and effort, but it's also going to take talking to the right people and networking with the right people. So, I mean, the fact that you're looking up these people, you're emailing them, you're finding them on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, I mean, is incredible. So you're obviously, you understand the power of networking, obviously.
it's incredibly important. I can't stress enough. I tell everybody at my flight school that, especially those of us that are, getting ready to get out into the field and start trying to get work. The very first job that I mean, I've only had one actual paid job so far. This summer, I went down to Texas and flew rice. And the
Nice.
entire reason that I was able to get that job was through an individual that I met through Instagram and had been talking to consistently for about a year or so. And that person directly linked me up with somebody who was running an operation down there. And that's why I got the job. It's 100% why I got the job. It wasn't because I'm some incredible pilot. It wasn't because I had 500 hours more than somebody else. It's because of who I knew. And they knew that I was, I guess in their eyes, a trustworthy and easy person to get along with and responsible enough. And that's why I got it. And that's why
Yeah,
it's so
it's
important to
incredible.
use these tools, reach out to people. There's a lot of us in the industry. I honestly, I cannot wait until I'm in the position to be able to help others out. I feel kind of bad when I reach out and ask people questions, or, kind of try to ask leading questions to see if they have positions and stuff open, because I don't want them to think that I'm just trying to get something from them. I can't wait until I have something to offer the aviation community, and especially up and coming new aviators. That's going to be awesome. That'll be a really cool feeling.
Yeah, I think it's always kind of a revolving door of mentorship, right? You're the mentee, and then you get to transition into the role of mentor. And that kind of will come in different phases throughout your career. You'll be a mentor first at your flight school, and then you'll be a mentor to CFIs that were at your previous flight school as you're flying your first turbine gig. And it's truly one of my favorite things to do is connect with my friends, and help them get to where they want to get to. And we all help each other out. It's a small community. I could probably say 100% that I've never had a job in this business that I didn't have someone advocating for me to get that job. Whether they placed the resume, at the top of the pile, or they put a good word in, they mentored me on, the interview process or how I should conduct myself, whatever it may be. I've had so much help along the way. And it is fun to now be in a position where I can provide some of that help back. So it's super cool. Mathew, we're kind of hitting our time here. I really appreciate you coming on. And I think it would be fun here in a probably 6-7 months after you've amassed some training experience as a CFI. We've been fortunate to have individuals on the podcast that are either new CFIs or guys like myself that were CFIs, a long time ago. We haven't really had an opportunity to talk with someone that's kind of right in the midst of their CFI career and kind of seeing what that experience has been like for you, kind of starting and, getting some time and whatnot. So I hope you'll be willing to come back on and talk about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I haven't taught a single hour yet of instructional time. So I am literally right at the very beginning of that portion of my career, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of different things that I'll learn and be willing to depart as things go on.
Yeah, no, it's super fun. You're going to really enjoy it. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to become a better pilot. You're going to see helicopter flying from a whole new perspective, a perspective that gives you just greater airmanship. And, I think you'll really enjoy that route. To our listeners out there, I can't thank you enough for supporting the Helicopter Podcast. Some cool things are on the horizon. We'll be making a big announcement here soon. So stand by for that. Go on social media. Please like the Helicopter Podcast on both Facebook and Instagram, and make sure you subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcast. And we are also putting podcasts on YouTube. So we have the Helicopter Podcast YouTube page you can check out. Mathew, again, thank you so much for your service, and congratulations to overcoming some of the medical hurdles. And good luck to you in your career as you're embarking on kind of your second chapter. I think it's going to be super rewarding, and I think you're going to do some awesome things.
I really appreciate it. And if anybody, kind of like a shameless plug, if anybody wants to follow along through my journey here coming up on Instagram, I'm under Victory Aviation USA. And if anybody does have any questions, we'll have the link on there about the vision stuff. But if you have any questions about the color vision portion or any other questions about GI Bill stuff or what, feel free to reach out. I help people all the time. And I have no issue doing with that. I take a lot of pleasure in being able to help others out. So don't be shy. Reach out, say hi, ask questions. There's a lot of us out there in the industry that want to help each other out.
That's what it's all about. Check them out, Victory Aviation USA. Mathew, again, thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you. It's been another episode of the Helicopter Podcast. Check you later.